Recently, I was asked if there was any famous landscape photographers that inspired me or that influenced the way that I do my photography. So the first photographer is not going to be any surprise to you. It's Ansel Adams, and Ansel Adams is, I think, a pioneer in landscape photography. But the reason that he's on my list is not because I love his photography. What I was inspired by was the fact that he was a pioneer in photography. And I don't know if you've heard the saying, it's quite famous. He says that you don't take a photograph, you make a photograph. And a lot of people don't understand where that quote came from, but it came from the fact that he believed that if you just took the photo and recorded the moment in time, then you were taking a photo. But if you took that photo and you manipulated it to make it something a little bit more like what you saw or felt when you were there, then you're creating a photo or you're making a photo. So he was a big fan in post-processing in the darkroom. So he used dodging and burning to do that. And a lot of people don't know that, but he sort of invented post-processing and made it okay for photographers to manipulate their images to make them have better dynamic range. But thanks, Ansel, for making it okay to post-process images. All right, photographer number 2 on my list is an Aussie photographer called Ken Duncan. And you may know of Ken. Ken has done some amazing work. He went across to the United States, I believe, in the 80s, and there was panoramic photography was sort of taking off there, and yet it wasn't happening here in Australia. He's become a household name, definitely here in Australia. He may be one that in the other countries people don't know about, but Ken Duncan is definitely one of my inspirations. Those of you that know me know I love my panoramic photography. All right, my third photographer on the list is going to be a little bit controversial because some people think or question his integrity, because this is Peter Lik. You've probably heard of Peter Lik. He was the guy that back in 2012 allegedly sold one of his images for 6.5 million. Never been able to be confirmed 100%. A lot of controversy around it. He's also had controversy around photoshopping in moons into some of his shots. We can definitely question that, but if you check out his photography, he's a great photographer. And I think he was actually maybe inspired by Ken Duncan because some of his panoramic work's really nice. I'm not so much into the abstract stuff, but definitely his landscapes are really well thought out and nicely composed, good foreground and great images. The fourth photographer on my list is another Aussie, so that's 3 in a row. He was an immigrant to Australia and he spent a lot of time in Australia, and that was Peter Dombrovskis. Now Peter unfortunately is no longer with us. He actually died of a heart attack at 51 out in doing what he loved. He was doing photography up a mountain somewhere and died of a heart attack, unfortunately. But he was made famous, or very famous, because he played a part in campaigning against the Franklin Dam in Tasmania, when they were trying to conserve the wilderness areas of Tasmania, and they succeeded. And so he got famous for that. But his photography is really nice. He was a large format photographer, so he would drag his great big camera through the wilderness to places where people couldn't normally get to, and he would photograph there. What makes his photos quite unique is that most of them are shot in the portrait, not the landscape orientation, which is unusual for a landscape photographer, but it works really well. Very strong foreground, beautiful saturated colors, and just lovely work to check out. All right, the fifth photographer on my list is Galen Rowell. We're going across to the US now. He's another photographer that has actually passed away. But Galen was a guy that was very fit and athletic and would scale amazing locations to take photos from high viewpoints. And he was well known for using 35mm film cameras. So his last camera that he used was a Nikon F100, but he was just using a 35mm camera, which wasn't really the done thing there for landscape photographers, but that's what he did, and he's got some amazing shots. Photographer number 6 on my list of famous photographers that inspire me or have influenced me is also from the USA, and this guy's called CLIFTON. And CARR is a photographer that just has an amazing knack for composing and putting foreground and leading lines. So if you really want to learn about composition, this is a photographer you should go and check out. He's just got a real knack for making you feel like you're standing in the images. I just love his photography. Photographer number 7, we're going to jump back across to New Zealand now. But this guy is an American guy who moved to New Zealand, and it won't be any surprise for those of you that have been following me for a while. His name's TREY, and TREY is probably the only one that is famous because of the internet. And having had his blog stuckincustoms.com take off for him, and he's been able to then leverage off his social media to grow his following to the point where he became a full-time photographer, and I think he's even developing software now. He runs photo tours, sells prints, does workshops. The reason why I'm inspired by him, number one, is for myself, when I was in a bit of a photography rut, I found that his HDR tutorials and his style of photography really got me thinking out of the box and doing something different. But the other thing that I love about him, if you ever hear him speak at an event, or you watch any of his keynotes, there was a TEDx that you can go and watch on YouTube of TREY RATCLIFF, and he tells the story of how he had all these haters, and you could see it anyway. When I was watching him and following his blog, the amount of hate messages he would get on his videos and on his blog used to amaze me, that people could be so negative about his style of photography. And it's a wonder the guy didn't give up. So very, very strong individual. And for that reason alone, I find him really inspiring, because he's just, regardless of everybody who was trying to put him down, he just kept doing what he believed in and what he was passionate about. And in the end, it's paid off. Photographer number 8 on my list of famous photographers that inspire me or influence my photography is David MUENCH. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't actually know a lot about David, except that he's a photographer in the USA, and his photos are just really cool, nice to look at. Very colourful, really good composition, beautiful foreground, leading lines, and has a knack for amazing photography. I think one of the reasons I really like David, and you'll see this when if you don't know what he looks like, he actually reminds me a little bit of Ansel Adams. He's got the beard going on, he's just got that look about him. His landscape photography is, really, really nice to look at and is inspiring. So he just made the list because, I think that some of these guys I've just gone and checked out their work when I've needed some inspiration, and he's one that stood out to me. My 9th photographer, if you're of my age and you've read a book on photography or how to take better photos or how to do photography, there's a likelihood that you've read a book from this guy. His name's Charlie WAITE. He's from the UK. He made square photos popular before Instagram was even around. He shot with a Hasselblad 6x6 camera. Amazing photographer, really, really nice, pastel colors. He really good with his foreground. A lot of his images would have beds of flowers or crops of something leading off into the distance. Really nice leading lines and just lovely photos. Very, very inspirational photographer, and I think, like I said, if you're of my vintage, you've probably read one of his books on photography. So there you have it, 9 famous landscape photographers that inspire me or influence the way that I take photos. Now, let me know down in the comments below if you didn't know all of them. Just be honest, I'd be interested to find out. And also, if you think I've missed anybody, feel free to add them down below and let us know who I've missed so I can go and check out their work as well. Well, as always, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one. Now get out there and take some photos.